It's a pretty good question, isn't it? I also think it's one that a lot of people like myself deal with. And it seems a little bit ridiculous because now I actually have a family and all these different things that are going on, but it's a question that has bugged me for a really long time. Am I doing something that's worth doing, and am I living a life that's worth living? And really, I think one of the reasons I ask myself that is it's something I've doubted for a really long time. I know in my line of work, I'm not always really producing stuff. I do help people and I help them lead better lives, but is it really worth anything? And that's a hard question to ask because you have to be really honest with yourself. And I enjoy it and I'm good at it, but is it necessarily a net benefit? Back when I was younger, I read this book called Blue Like Jazz. And I don't remember everything about it, but there's one story that always really stuck out to me. And what it was this person that went to Africa and dug all these wells. And my entire takeaway was, are you living a life that's worth hearing about and remembering? And what is your life story? Like, I understand that I enjoy my life story, but has it been impactful upon other people? Like, I've always been involved in a bunch of different things, and I like trying to make the place where I live to be a better place, and I feel like I've done that through different things like coaching in Little League and being involved with my church and community and trying to do these different, just overall different things that make where I live better, but is it enough? And that's a huge question. I think that I'm not the only person that deals with that. And I mean, I don't know if that's something that I'll ever really get over because at the end of the day, what can I do to make that better? Like, one of my biggest achievements that I'd say is I worked for 5 years out in a town called Terrebonne that's just north of where I live to get an entire town off of septic. And it looks like that's actually going to happen. So that's really cool. And like, I've done a whole bunch of stuff that I hope makes my community better, but sometimes I'm just really not sure. Like, I feel like I'm doing the checklist. Wife, kid, house, job, money. It's all the things that you need to do that they say you need to be happy, but am I as happy as I want to be or as happy as I could be? That's a really big question. I think I'm happy, and I feel happy a lot of the time, but sometimes I doubt that I'm doing the right stuff. And none of these things are things that are negative. In fact, in a majority of cases, they've made me a lot happier. And a lot of times I think we just get stuck in the cycle. We're like, want, do, accomplish, compare. And we continue to do that. We want something, and then we go and we do it. Then once we reach the accomplishment, we compare to the other people, and sometimes we aren't as good as we think we are, so we want what they have, so we go and we do it. And then once we accomplish it, we compare it again. And at the end of the day, I think that just really makes us unhappy. So in order to actually become happy, I think we actually have to work on being grateful for what we do have. It kind of reminds me of a time that my dad and I went to dinner at this family's house. Or the reason we were there, we ended up selling a piece of property that my family owned, and well, it wasn't a great house. It was a little manufactured place, but they were so grateful for being able to purchase the home that they invited us over for dinner. And when we went inside, it wasn't anything special. In fact, we'd managed and rented to them for a while, and we never really considered them to be our best tenants. There's one thing that has stuck with my family for a long time, and has definitely stuck with my dad and myself, was everybody in the house was happy. They didn't have a lot. They had one another, they had some good food. Overall, they were really grateful for what they had. And while that might not be what you consider a life worth reading about or a life worth remembering, it was a life worth living. And truly, I think that's what the whole goal of this whole being alive thing is. So I guess what I'm trying to say at the end of this whole thing is, instead of trying to live a life that's worth remembering and trying to do this whole thing, live a life that's worth living and be happy with what you have, because at the end of the day, that's what you got. So you might as well love what you got. Doesn't mean that life can't get better, but don't forget about where you're at.